Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. It's the Hebrew Abdul Rahman, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most widely misinterpreted verses of the Quran, which is it's in chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 191, which is the "kill you wherever you find them" verse. Now, a lot of people have always used this verse to discredit Islam or to prove that Islam is a religion of war, or to say that terrorism is is what's the word I'm looking for, is encouraged within the Quran. All of these are entirely untrue, and I'm going to be obviously disproving that and explaining the meaning behind the verse and show how it's been taken out of context. Now, before I get into this, I just want to say that obviously many verses in different religious texts can be taken out of context. To give one right off the back, in the book of Matthew in the New Testament of the Bible, chapter 10 verse 34, Matthew 10:34, which is, "Do not think I came to bring love, I did not bring love but a sword." Some of the different versions of the Bible say something slightly different, so say that, "Do not think I came to bring peace, I did not bring peace but a sword." And they swap out the word love for different different words, but the Bible that I have, it says love. So without further ado, let's go right into it. Like I said, this is chapter 2 verse 191 of the Quran, where it says, "Kill them wherever you find them." Now, if this is the only verse of the Quran you've ever seen, it's incredibly understandable why you would think the way that you think, that Muslims are encouraged to go out and commit acts of terror and kill innocent people. However, if you look at the verses around that verse, as well as looking to the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that Muslims follow, you'll see why this isn't true. So, for example, in the verse right before that, so in chapter 2, verse 190, it says, "Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress limits, for Allah loves not the transgressors." So, obviously it's talking about, first of all, it says, "Fight those who fight you," meaning so it can only be done in self-defense. This is exactly the same way it's worded in modern-day legal terms. So in most countries, also obviously in the UK and in the US, if you go up to someone and just punch them in the face, you're gonna get arrested for it. At the very least, you're gonna get in trouble for it, because it's completely unprovoked. They didn't do anything to you. You just went up to them and hit them, as far as the law's concerned. Now, if they hit you first and you hit them back, that's self-defense. So exactly in the same way it's written in the Quran, just the Quran uses obviously some more flowery language to surround it. So obviously we cover the fact that it's only in defense. Now, also it goes into obviously don't transgress limits, for Allah loves not the transgressors. So in regards to what these limits are, well, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in his hadith tells us what they mean. So what he means by this is the fact that obviously no women, no children, the elderly, or anyone who's not involved in the fighting, so innocents, they're not to be touched. Even to the point where even women who are wielding weapons, people still went to wound them rather than try and kill them because of the fact that they were still women. It also talks about the fact that you cannot destroy property or burn the crops of your enemy. Now, let's just take a pause right here. So obviously when we look at what happened on 9/11, which was a horrific attack, and rest in peace to all the victims who died in that attack, apart from obviously the terrorists themselves, forget them. Obviously there were planes that were flying into buildings, which then caused the buildings to collapse. So we're not going to go into the conspiracy theories part of it, we're just talking about exactly what people saw on the day, or in the videos of. So that's already gone against the Quran, for the simple fact of the matter is they've destroyed property, and they've also killed innocent people. These people weren't soldiers, they weren't, this wasn't a military installation that they hit. There were twin towers that caused the collapse, as well as killing many innocent people on ground, not to mention obviously all the firefighters and first responders who went inside the buildings to help people. So they've already gone against the code of Islam. So from looking at that, how can people say that terrorists are therefore Muslim? You can't. So now there's also I want to look at obviously where the history of this verse comes from. Excuse me. So at the time when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, started preaching Islam, and when it was revealed to him, when he was spreading the message around to different people, he lived in a city called Mecca. Now, at the time, the Meccans were idol worshippers, or pagans as they're called, meaning they used to worship statues of what they believed the gods and spirits looked like. Now, these weren't sent down from the heavens, they weren't sent down from space or anything like that. A lot of these statues were made by hand, meaning people literally just went out with a block of wood or a thing or a chunk of rock, sculpted these statues, and then began praying to them. Doesn't really sound very holy when you look at it that way, does it? So, and when he started preaching against that, saying that's wrong, you're going to hell for this, and things like that, as well as he started preaching that there's no difference between rich and poor, black and white, Arab and non-Arab, only matters by by the strength of your piety or your religiousness or your faith, that's the only thing that separates people. People didn't like that because the Prophet Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, at the time they were very wealthy people. In fact, considering the fact that they controlled the Kaaba, obviously the block that Muslims make pilgrimage around, when they walk around it 7 times. So people still did this back then, but what they did was they used to, what's the word I'm looking for? They used to, in a sense, run it, meaning so they control. Obviously, they charge people to come in. They sold them water and things like that. So when they started preaching against this, obviously because the Kaaba at the time was filled with all of these religious idols, when they started preaching against their idol worship, they immediately got angry at this because for starters it would start affecting their pockets. Meaning, because if people started to believe this, therefore they wouldn't come to pray at the Kaaba. Therefore, the Quraysh tribe wouldn't make money. So they immediately turned against Muhammad. They called him a madman. They said, he was insane, or they said that, he was a magician or a trickster, and he was lying to people. Excuse me. So, because of this, they then started to insult him. They started to attack him. There's one case where Muhammad himself was praying in the direction of Mecca to the Kaaba as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him to do so, and his own uncle struck him in the head with a rock. So you got to think it's not even just random people, it's his own family that are turning against him here, his own blood relatives. So, and also to the people who had accepted Islam openly and were professing their faith, they were getting killed, and they weren't doing anything. They weren't fighting back. They weren't fighting first, of course not. And so, like I say, they weren't doing anything to defend themselves. So, because of this, the verses were all revealed, like I say, from verse 190 onwards, saying they would fight those in the cause of Allah who fight you, but do not transgress limits. So, they were only allowed to fight back in defence, and they weren't to go too far, so i.e. to start destroying their property or to kill the women and children, to poison the water or anything. So, obviously, like I said, due to this, they were ordered to defend themselves. And it also goes into fight against the oppressors, so people who are oppressing them, or and to drive them out from where they have driven you out. So what that means is that because obviously they were being thrown out of their houses and things like that. So obviously, if you're looking at that in the modern day sense, if I came to you and threw you out of your house and said, "This is mine now," you wouldn't accept that, would you? No, I wouldn't if someone did it to me. So under Islamic law, at the very least, you have the right to say, "No, this is my house. I'm taking it back." And that's simply what that verse means. And to give this a more modern day example, when you look at, for example, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan during the 1980s, the reason why this happened, I'll go into a bit of history here. The Soviet Union, for some reason, believed that the Americans during the Cold War wanted to set up a missile base in Afghanistan to launch into the Soviet Union. Now, according to people in the CIA, this is wrong. This is, they had no intentions of doing that, and they had no idea where they got their intel from. But it's kind of like, if any of you are familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis, basically the same thing, except it would be the Afghanistan missile crisis, for lack of a better term. So they invaded Afghanistan to try and stop this. Now, the problem is with a lot of communist countries is the fact that when they take power, they suppress anything that is against state, so i.e. religion as well. So, for example, in the Soviet Union and in other communist countries, whenever the Communist Party took power, they immediately started killing all the religious leaders, all the priests, all the religious students, all the nuns, everything. And so because of that, they were considered to be godless, or atheists. So the Taliban at the time, which is what they were called, as well as the Mujahideen, they were taught that, because obviously therefore they're atheists, they're trying to kill us as well as take our religion away, therefore we're allowed to fight them, which is true. They were invading their own country, they were trying to take away their lives, and suppress their religion, therefore they were allowed to defend themselves and fight back, which is completely understandable. I mean, if you look, see, no matter who you are, if someone tried to invade your country or invade your home, you would stop them. You wouldn't just let them take everything. So that's where those verses come from. So now if you go a bit further, so past 191 to verse 192, it says, "Now if they cease, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful." So you can fight them until they surrender. So if they stop fighting, you stop fighting them. Don't keep going. Which again is the same thing in modern day legal terms. If you get into a fight with someone and they run away, if you chase after them, then you're the one who's then committing the crime, because obviously they've stopped, they're trying to get away from you and you're still chasing them. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a bit of a cold. So that's the way, obviously, we look at that. So obviously, hopefully this makes sense to all of you, and now you understand why the verse was revealed the way that it was, and to not take this verse out of context, or to assume that because of this verse alone Muslims are allowed to commit acts of terrorism, because as I said, 9/11, they destroyed the Twin Towers and things like that, as well as in obviously modern day groups like ISIS and stuff like that, who go around killing innocent people. They've killed women and children, they've destroyed buildings, and they're claiming to be Muslim holy warriors. They're clearly not. So hopefully, obviously, this all makes sense to you. If I've missed anything out, please let me know in the comment section. If there's any other topics you'd like me to do a video on, like I say, please let me know. Please remember to like and subscribe. If I've gotten this video horrifically backwards, which I generally don't think I have, please let me know, and obviously I'll delete it. But yeah, until then, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Eid, Eid Mubarak to all of you, and until next time, peace.